I love guilt and shame because I love every single emotion that we have. Guilt and shame being a couple of the strongest ones that we experience, the more powerful ones that really can feel like they're all-encompassing, and they can feel like they're making decisions for us. And I love them because so many people don't.
Meet Alicia Maples.
You're here. I am so happy to see you.
Her TEDx talk has set a global viral trend about glass children. She's helped millions of hurting glass children around the world feel seen. You've seen her on NBC, CNN.com, and countless online articles. Here is your host, Alicia Maples.
Welcome to the I See Glass Children podcast. This is the place where we boldly dig into all things related to the glass child experience. We own our stories without shame, we pursue our healing, and we claim our value independent of others' thoughts, feelings, or expectations. Because you are important to me, I have to give you a warning. Some of the things you hear on the I See Glass Children podcast may be triggering for you, especially if you experience childhood trauma and neglect. And while I will occasionally have mental health professionals as special guests, I am not a licensed therapist, and this podcast is never meant to be a substitute for a supportive and healing relationship with a professional counselor. I'm your host, Alicia Maples. I am a glass child, and I see you. You are about to meet somebody incredible. If you grew up feeling responsible for things that were never yours to carry, if guilt and shame became the water you swam in just to survive, you are not alone. Today, we're talking about two of the heaviest emotions glass children often bear, guilt and shame. But we're not stopping at identifying the pain. We're talking about transformation. Today, I'm joined by Ada Undis, an expert in helping people take disempowering guilt and shame, the kind that keeps us stuck and silent and small, and we're going to turn it into something that fuels self-awareness, growth, and even liberation. Together, we'll explore why guilt and shame aren't always enemies, how you can recognize when they're leading your life, and how to reclaim your story from their grip. If you've ever asked yourself, why do I feel guilty for just existing? This conversation is for you. Let's dive in. Welcome to the show, Adas.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here today.
I am too. Okay, so let's be really frank. I want to be frank with the audience. When I talked to Ada, the first thing that she said after she told me she was happy to meet me was, I love guilt and shame. And I went, who are you? Like in my head, I didn't say this to you, but in my head I went, who is this person? And we have to talk. We have to have a conversation about this because that is one of the craziest things that I've ever heard. I love guilt and shame. So, you were so enthusiastic about it. And as an adult glass child who has carried guilt and shame for as long as I can remember, and am still carrying it, I've got to ask you, why do you love guilt and shame?
That is a beautifully fantastic question, and I love that that's the one thing that caught you when we were speaking, because it does catch everyone by surprise when I say I love something that they've learned not to, or they see as a negative thing, a very hard thing that you want to escape from. And the reason I say I always say, I love the things that you hate about yourself, or I love the things that you want to escape from. I'm going to be here to embrace them, and help them see, and help you see them in a different light. And I love guilt and shame because I love every single emotion that we have. Guilt and shame being the one of the couple of the strongest ones that we experience, the more powerful ones that really can overtake and can feel like they're all encompassing, and they can feel like they're making decisions for us almost. And I love them because so many people don't. I love them because I know that they're not the problem. They're not anything to be fixed. They're not anything that's wrong with you. I love them because they're protectors. I love them because they serve a magical purpose. I love them because they've protected you and kept you safe for a long, long time. Before you knew better, before you could do anything else. And I love them for that because they helped you and they helped you survive and be here. And while they can feel very heavy and very strong, they're here for you. And that's why I love them.
You know, you are almost describing guilt and shame like they could be my friends. Like I could be friends. We could go to a coffee bar. I could get a latte, and guilt, shame, and I could hang out and have a drink.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
So I don't even understand. Precisely. I don't understand it yet. We're going to understand it further in, but I'm so loving this. So one of the things, in addition to you just proclaiming that you love guilt and shame, that made me say yes to having you be on this podcast is you said that through the work that you do through Find Your Happy, you help move people from disempowering guilt and shame to empowering guilt and shame. And so we're going to get to that in just a minute. But I want to ask kind of a foundational question, which is many adult glass children have carried guilt and shame for most of their lives. It was something that either was put on them, it was something that they learned. And how do you see disempowering guilt and shame showing up in adulthood when a child has experienced trauma?
Before we learn that guilt and shame is empowering, and that's a wild concept at the moment. Guilt and shame shows up in being so incredibly independent to a fault, being afraid to ask for help, feeling guilty for having any sort of need, for feeling guilty for having needs, and then feeling shameful for thinking that you're a bad person because you have needs, or asking for help, or feeling like they need to be someone living a different life that they want to be living, or feeling jealous, feeling that they should have more, but never wanting to let that be the truth. Mourning mourning the life that they could have had, but not, and feeling also guilty about that and also shameful about that. And there's a lot of disempowerment because as you carry that with you, it doesn't just stay in the moment that was needed, in the moment that those protective mechanisms came on, but it also shows up, as you become an adult. It really shows up in, like I said, in becoming very independent and feeling scared of letting people in, of feeling scared of or taking the burden of everything on the outside on you. This is my job. I need to do this by myself. I can't ask for help. Becoming burnt out, becoming tired, guilt and shame even plays into not feeling confident in yourself and feeling shutting down and not going for the things that you want to go for because you don't deserve them, not feeling deserving. And everything, again, with the shadow of I am a bad person for wanting something different. I am a bad person for wanting a different life or for longing for a different life, for longing for connection. And it really disempowers you in a way that leaves you lonely and tired and with a very loud mind and hidden a lot of the times, still continuously hidden.
Said every glass child ever. And I'm looking in the room because I've got a glass child in here and she's going, yes. Yes to all the things that that you just said. So how do guilt and shame shape the decisions that we make as adults?
Sometimes we don't even realize we're in a guilt and shame cycle because it's so embedded and it's been with us for such a long time that it feels like a default. And I love using the word, and you'll notice me, I use the word and, not but, because it's all a yes and situation. And when guilt and shame take over or are in the driver's seat, our decisions are almost not ours and they never take us into account. They're always based on someone else's needs. So whatever decisions you find yourself making, you're making out of the feeling that you can't have that for yourself, that there's other people are more important. Other people's needs are more important. So saying yes to yourself almost never exists. And if you do say yes to yourself, it comes with such an incredibly heavy notion of I shouldn't have done that.
It feels very selfish.
Yes.
It feels selfish to say yes to yourself.
Correct. Because it's never been allowed. It's never been allowed. It's never been taught. Someone else was always more important. So how can I be important? I have to take care of others. That's what's right.
And one of the things that I want to point out about that, this idea that we don't have the right to say yes to ourselves and we have to say yes to everybody else, even at our own detriment, that actually can lead us into dangerous situations and into dangerous relationships. Imagine you're involved with someone who has narcissistic tendencies, who is very happy to remind you that your needs are less important than theirs and that your feelings are less important than theirs and that your job is to set aside yourself for that other person. A lot of destruction in relationships can come in adulthood if there's unaddressed guilt and shame, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you today. So let's move into the healing aspect. So and let's take guilt and shame separately, unless you believe that we need to talk about them in an intertwined basis. You can tell me, how do we start moving from disempowered guilt and shame into empowered guilt and shame?
When working with it, choose one. While they both can be approached in a very similar way, to work with it in order to become empowered, but working with both for you're the listener, can be much. So I would invite to pick one that's sitting with you right now. And as we're talking here, related to the one that feels more active, more alive. So whether it's guilt, whether maybe that's sitting heavy with you in your chest or in your heart, or maybe it's shame somewhere in your throat or in your heart. pick one and focus on that one as we continue this conversation, and to now answer your question of how to get it to from a disempowered to empowered place.
That was really good, by the way. I appreciate that advice to the listeners to pick the one that's sitting the heaviest with them. That was great. Okay, so they've picked the one.
They fit the one, yes. Because the one that's feeling very active is the one that wants your attention. And that's where that empowerment happens, is in order, you've ran from guilt and shame. It's been with you for a long, long time. But you've ran away from it, not even realizing that, or even felt guilty and shameful about feeling guilt and shame. It's
ridiculous
cycle.
It's ridiculous, right? Like, I feel guilty and ashamed, and then I feel guilty about feeling guilty and ashamed. And by the way, some of this is reinforced in childhood, because we will hear things from our parents like, what do you have to be upset about? At least you can go to school. At least you're not sick. At least you can walk. At least you can have friends. It's this comparative emotional invalidation, and that feeds this almost never-ending cycle. So I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
You're good. No, it's a very powerful reminder too, that and it's a vicious cycle, and it's one of the hardest things about guilt and shame is that feeling guilty and shameful about feeling guilty and shameful, and it's very confusing at times. And the fact that you're feeling a sort of way about feeling guilty and shameful tells you that you're ready to break out of that cycle as well. So that's an empowered stance from that perspective, is if you're feeling guilty and shameful about feeling guilt and shame, that means you're ready. And
that's beautiful. That's like, I know you have so much more to say, but I just want to pause for a second to let people digest what you just said, that those feelings are not an indication of hopelessness. It's an indication of the fact that there is hope, because your psyche and your body are ready to do something to change it. Yes. That's beautiful.
Your body and your subconscious realized a long time that guilt and shame is not working anymore, and it's giving you pointers, or it's giving you those little notifications, I call it, that you're ready to move through it in a different way, but you just might not know how to. So let's talk about that, because again, you've deemed guilt and shame as potentially as a sign that you're broken, as a sign that you're not worthy, as a sign that you're bad. And they're very heavy. So being with them feels very heavy. And the way to stop carrying the burden, as you said in the very beginning, and the way to see them in a different light and be able to, because the guilt and shame can become your superpower. They're heavy, very heavy with you, not because they're trying to remind you that you're a bad person. They're not trying to remind you or make you believe that there is no hope, that you have to put yourself last. They are very strongly with you because there is that part of you that's longing to be loved. They're only loud because they're longing for your love in that particular moment. They're not longing they're wanting, you have, just like you have longed for someone to see you your entire life, especially in childhood, your younger self has longed for someone to see you, for someone to hug you, for someone to sit with you, and for someone to validate and just tell you that, hey, you matter. Guilt and shame being very heavy. So whichever one is very active and very heavy for you right now, that's what it's here for. It's for you. It's wanting that from you. It's wanting you to pause and be able to see that part of you, feel that guilt or feel that shame, and give yourself that love and that hug that you've needed for such a long time.
So I've picked the one that I'm feeling the most, and I can identify it and I see it. What do I do next?
Okay, so I love it. Let's do it live. And now you're gonna come home with it. You're gonna come home to yourself, and I call it the home method, because we're going to honor, we're going to open, we're going to embrace, and we're going to meet it. Because you've ran a long time. So now that you hold courageously, because I want to courageously, I want to celebrate you that you're courageously holding your guilt or your shame, or the one that's really active. Honor it instead of, for the first time maybe in your life, honor the fact that it exists. Honor the fact that it isn't here to make you feel like a bad person, but rather it has protected you for a long, long time.
So what I hear you saying is that I can actually talk to it. So
just like you wanted to go to a coffee shop.
Go to a coffee shop and have a latte with my guilt and shame. I can talk to them at the coffee shop. Yes. And I can, and instead of the normal self-talk, like I'll talk about myself for a second that I would have, which is, why are you feeling guilty about this? You know you don't need to feel guilty about this. Why are you feeling ashamed? You know you can talk about it. But instead of beating myself up about it, I can sit down and have coffee with them and say, hey, thank you for protecting me.
Correct.
Now it's time to do something different.
Correct. Yes. Honoring what they did. So seeing that part of you, feeling that part of you, and changing the narrative of, yes, thank you. I see you. I see what you're doing for me. I see what you've done for me for such a long time. And it makes sense. Of course I feel this way. I understand why I feel this way. And I'm not wrong for feeling it either. You're not wrong by being here. I'm okay with you being here.
And I think you said the O was open.
O is open. O is open, and O is where we get curious. So you open yourself up to curiosity. So just like you catch yourself, you go for coffee, ask guilt and shame some questions. My favorite being, what do you need me to know? What do you need me to know? Is this story, what stories are you still living with? Is this story true? And how can I support you?
I'm about to break down again.
Right. How can I support you? What can be the most empowering thing for me?
Ooh. Wow. That was the sound of the tissue box sliding across the table.
And
I don't know if anybody else is getting anything out of this today, but I can tell you I am getting something out of this. Those are fabulous questions. I can just see people hitting rewind to hear those questions again. So that's open. What is the M?
The meat. And you just beautifully, I'm glad that your vulnerability just hit, because that's how you meet. That's the next step. You meet is that vulnerability, sit, stay, and breathe and listen. So the emotions coming up, the tears, the throat swelling, don't run, stay. Just like you would with a friend or just like you would with your younger version of yourself, or with a little kid that's panicking right now and needs your support. Stay and take a breath with it and listen. Listen to everything that it wants you to know instead of trying to fix it. or trying to fix yourself.
And I think part of that too, at least what's occurring to me, is that I want to remind myself that even though I'm going to have lots of big feelings about this, that I'm still in charge. Like I don't have to succumb or submit to anything. I'm still in charge of this process and what it looks like and how much I choose to engage.
Yes. Yes. And that's the embrace. So that's the last part. Beautifully. See how it flows together?
I did not orchestrate this beforehand, just so everybody knows.
Yeah, it works beautifully together because in that embrace, as you meet it, as you stay with it, you remind yourself that it's okay to be messy. You embrace the truth, right? You're giving yourself permission. I get to feel this. I'm allowed to be messy. I'm allowed to be feeling this. I'm allowed to have needs. I'm allowed to not fully believe that yet either. You don't have to believe fully that it's okay to have needs, but it's okay that you're opening yourself up to it and you're embracing the fact that your guilt is okay to be here. I feel guilty and that's okay. I feel shame and that's okay.
I have a couple of thoughts running through my head that I want to bounce off of you with regards to guilt and shame. And first, let me just honor you. I think the process that you have outlined is beautiful. And I can see my listeners wanting to contact you and work with you. So don't worry, everybody. We're going to have all of Ada's information in the show notes for you so that you can connect with her on her website and also through social media. I was thinking, Ada, about the difference between guilt and shame. And one of the things that occurred to me as I was reflecting back on my childhood and maybe even especially moments in my adulthood, like as I think about one relationship in particular, guilt was something that was internal that I felt. Shame is what kept me silent. Shame about what I was experiencing and what I was feeling and what I was going through is the thing that kept me from, as an adult, from asking for help, from seeking support. Is that your experience with some of the differences between guilt and shame?
Yes, I love that. I love that question or that share. Because and when I think about guilt and shame, the difference, because they're so very similar in how you experience, or they're so very similar in potentially the how you feel it and what happens. But guilt is guilt is believing that I did something bad. That external thing that you mentioned, it connects to something external, and carries this story that I did. The doing is something bad, and the shame is the belief that I am bad. So it's almost that becoming the part of your identity. Shame comes with part of your identity where I am bad. I am not good enough. And that's a big difference where, I loved your explanation that guilt is more of that external piece where shame brings it home and becomes almost that home where it becomes part of who you are to a point.
So one of the things that I'm looking forward to is having some coffee dates with my new friends, Guilt and Shame.
Yeah.
But I have a question, which is, and this happens a lot with adult glass children. I'm not going to assign blame. It just is what it is. Our families can sometimes be the most guilty purveyors of guilt and shame in our lives and heap this responsibility on us that isn't ours. And this is one of the reasons that so many adult glass children go low contact or even no contact to get out of the toxicity of the family relationships. So what advice do you have for someone whose family is attempting to make them feel guilt and shame? And is it okay if I give you some examples?
Sure, of course.
Okay. What do you mean you're not coming home for Christmas? You know how much we miss you and how much your brother wants to see you. What do you mean you don't want your sister to go with you and your friends to dinner? You know she doesn't have a social life and you're the only person that she feels comfortable with. What do you mean you don't want to take care of your brother or sister when you're older? Who else are they going to have in their lives but you? So those are some examples of things that we have heard from our families. When we hear those things, what do we do?
Yeah. Oh my goodness, yes. And I want to say first, I see you. You're not alone. You're not alone. That's a big one, is you're not alone. And when you're learning to hold boundaries, because this is where you hold boundaries, that's where a lot of that guilt and shame from that perspective comes in. When you're learning to hold boundaries, when you're learning to say yes to yourself and no to other people, there is one reminder a couple reminders is just because guilt and shame come over you doesn't mean they get to make a decision, right? So in that, as you get to meet them for coffee, you're time and time again, you will learn, and it will require some practice to remind yourself that you are still in charge. You still get to make the decision, even if the guilt or the shame comes up. That doesn't mean that you have to make a decision that someone else needs you to make. And your decision, the reason why you feel guilty about saying no or you're considering saying yes is because the fear of that discomfort, of the judgment, of making that other person, your family, be uncomfortable or make them judge you or whatever their reaction is that's a very big fear. And I want to remind you that their feelings are not your responsibility.
Wait, say that again. For everybody who got distracted and started scrolling through their Instagram, back up and say that one more time, please.
You are not responsible for another person's feelings. They're not your responsibility.
Yeah. I can attest to the difficulty in practicing setting boundaries. And it is almost like with parents, and for me, it was not my father. It was my mother in particular. It was almost like training a child. She was so used to my compliance and me giving in to the guilt trip that when I started to say no, there were tantrums, almost like a 2-year-old tantrum. And what do you mean? And multiple phone calls, and we had crying, we had all kinds of things. This was years ago, and it was so difficult to stand my ground. And over time, I got to the place, and I'm sharing this as a hopeful thing for everyone who's listening. It got easier for me over time, and she did learn. And what I learned is when she attempted to guilt me into doing what she wanted me to do, when I said things to her like, I understand this is what you want, but this is not what I want. And I am making a choice and a decision for myself. And I'm sorry if that hurts your feelings, but you're going to have to live with those feelings. Followed up by, because when you're training, those of you who are parents, when you're training, I'm not a parent, but when you are training a child, it takes repetition. And so, and my mom wanted to keep pushing those boundaries. And I had to say, if you bring this up one more time, I'm not going to accept your phone calls anymore. And sure enough, that's what I had to do. And it was painful for both of us, but we have a better relationship today than we've had in many years. And it's unfortunate, and I didn't like that I had to do those things, and it was not pleasant to do those things. But it has resulted in a much healthier relationship for us, and especially for me. So that is one way that I set boundaries in order to alleviate myself of the guilt and shame that she tried to put on me for not complying with what she wanted that I was not comfortable with.
You're very lucky that your parent also understood that at one point.
She kind of understood.
Kind of, at least, kind of.
She didn't have a choice. She's not happy. She would much rather things were the way that they were. But it's either interact with me in this way or we don't have a relationship. And at the end of the day, she chose relationship over having things exactly the way that she wanted them.
And I have one more phrase that one can use when it comes to setting the boundary. It's, you set your boundary, or when you have a conversation about it, you add, and I simply ask you to respect my decision.
That's good. That's because so good.
It puts that importance of, well, they get to choose whether they respect you or not, and then you get to decide what to do with that. And if you're someone that your family won't choose a relationship over how they like things, because that's where my mom is. My grandma, her mother, never chose her, chose her familiarity. We see you, and we see you, and you're not alone.
Thank you for that. I have one last question I want to ask you, but before I do, is there anything else that you want to address to adult glass children that we haven't talked about yet?
I think just a reminder that everything we've talked about, just as a last reminder that guilt and shame will feel heavy, and you will slip, and you will be reminded time and time again, and they will keep coming at you. And it doesn't mean that you're not strong enough. It doesn't mean that you're failing. It doesn't mean that you don't get to ask to be loved. You don't get to want to feel seen. You get to change your life through guilt and shame, not outside of it.
Let's go to the last question, Ada. If you could offer a message to the part of an adult glass child who still feels guilty for not carrying the weight of everyone's feelings and expectations, what truth would you offer them to help them set themselves free?
That's okay that you still, and that's okay. If you still feel guilty, if you still feel shameful, that's okay. You loved yourself so much throughout your life that guilt and shame became something that you embraced yourself with. And it doesn't make you wrong. It doesn't make you bad. It doesn't make you broken. And it's never too late. It comes back because it wants to be embraced by you. That guilt, that shame, it's still here because there's still so much room for you to do what you want to do, to break free of that. And it starts with saying that you're okay. The truth is that you are okay. And you're going to be okay when guilt is here and when shame is here. They're okay and you're okay. And that's where your change starts.
Well, I didn't think it was possible, but I have 2 new friends, Guilt and Shame, and a third one named Ada. And I am so grateful for your time and your talent, and that you were willing to come on this podcast and share this wisdom with so many people around the world. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. You do beautiful things, and this community really is lucky to have you on this podcast. And thank you for allowing me or giving me the space to be here and share today.
Anytime. I'm waiting for you to come up with a book, and we'll have you on again.
Well, I guess I gotta get writing.
I'm telling you, you need to hop to it, Ada. The world is waiting for that book.
All right, that was my childhood dream, so we might just make it happen.
Okay, you keep me posted. Thank you. Take care. How are you feeling? Remember, if you're struggling, reach out to a mental health professional. You do not have to do this alone. Thank you for being with me today, and don't forget to share this episode with your bestie, your therapist, your teachers, your minister. Sharing is caring, and hearing is healing. This is the I See Glass Children podcast. I'm Alicia Meneses-Maples, and I see you. God sees you, and Jesus loves you.